All right, this is Jeffrey Crivero. I'm conducting an oral history with Miss Fannie Miller. The interview is being conducted at Hopper Academy in the Georgetown neighborhood of Sanford, Florida on Saturday, February 8th, 2025. Ms. Miller, thank you for speaking with us today. If you would, please begin by just stating your full name and telling us a little bit about where you're from and what life was like for you growing up.
Okay. Well, my name is Fannie Miller, and I grew up right here in Sanford. As a matter of fact, this was my first elementary school, right where we're doing this taping. It was Hopper Elementary at that time, and I was here until they transitioned into what we called New Hopper, which is on Bay Avenue right now. And I think the enjoyable thing about growing up here was the community atmosphere and the village kind of mentality of taking care of each other. That was one of the most, if I had to think of a word, I would say village atmosphere in raising children. Just everybody kind of took care of everybody. Most of the folk knew people, and many of us attended the same churches or in the circle of the Georgetown area. Most of us were in one of those churches. So that just kind of provided us with an atmosphere in which we felt loved and cared about.
So you attended school at Hopper. What memories stand out to you? Did you have a favorite teacher?
Yes, I did. And you'll find this extremely interesting. And the reason why I said that is my favorite teacher in elementary was Mrs. Merritt. And Mrs. Merritt is the mother of the speaker you have over there, Patricia Watley, because she was Patricia Merritt Watley originally. So Merritt was her maiden name. And her mother was just such an energetic and creative teacher. I can recall my little fourth grade class doing a play entitled Mr. Geography. And that sticks in my mind because we had so much fun. We didn't have a lot of funds to travel, obviously, out of the country, but she made geography really come alive by allowing us to pretend that we were traveling to Japan, to different countries. And the scenery that was created was painted by the children and some adults who supervised to make it really look good. It was wonderful. We sat on these really high stools above the scenery so that it looked as if you were looking in on the area that you were traveling to. And I'll always remember it. I happened to be one of the, I guess you could say, travel guides for that. So I was one of the ones who got to sit on the high stool, and it was just wonderful. But there were so many things. This very room that we're sitting in right now used to be our kind of arts and crafts class, which it seems to still be kind of being used in that way. But every summer, we would have what we called like a summer recreation. And these rooms were, this room and the one next to us, were the ones used for us to paint, for us to make pot holders, for us to do different kinds of art projects, even clay and all, making molds and all that sort of thing. And then right outside, we played softball, dodgeball, all those things during summer school. And also on Wednesdays, what was significant was that we got to go swimming. We didn't have a swimming pool in this area, but the Goldsboro area did have one, Goldsboro Elementary. And we would be loaded up onto the bus, taken to Goldsboro, got to swim in the pool, and then we would return here before dismissal for us to go home. And that was a lot of fun during the summer. It kept us active in a positive manner. And I think it connected us even with other schools other than Hopper. So other schools also that didn't have buses, would also come. So there would be this huge group of kids, because at that time we were not allowed to swim in the pools downtown Sanford. So even though that was supposed to be the community pool, we weren't allowed at that time. So we did get together, we got to go swim, or pretend to swim. So those are the kinds of memories that I'll cherish and always remember. The teachers, the principals, all the people we knew, so many of them were in my church as well. We also had what was then known as the superintendent for the black schools. She was also a member and a Sunday school teacher. So there was such a tight community situation. And even the people who, no matter what kind of job you had, you were respected as an elder. I think that's one of the things that's kind of got lost a little, that respect for our elders. And we were taught to do that. It didn't matter that you didn't know them personally. If you were a latchkey kid, meaning your parents were working, when you got home from school, the people who lived in the neighborhood around you, the Georgetown area, on near historic St. James on Cypress Avenue, there were people who lived in that community. I can recall one lady who was a seamstress. That's another thing that we've kind of lost over the time. People who were beauticians and seamstresses who lived in the area, and they practiced from their homes. So again, like I said, made it really close. Businesses that we had, little stores within the neighborhood, which don't exist anymore really, the way that they did then. I can remember the times that we would stop sometimes on the way home and buy cookies. And back then the cookies were like 2 for a penny. And they were these huge cookies. Nothing like that exists today that I know of. So that was kind of talks to what we got. We also had from within our churches, we got a lot of spiritual development. I think the fact that you realize that you needed to get these things to become intrinsic in you so that you could share them, so that you could give back to the community in which you grew up and others had invested in you. So those are the kinds of things that also stick with you. Your religious background that taught you that if you want to really succeed, they were great role models for us, and we saw their lives play out before us. And it gave us the hope and the desire to want to improve and do better. You know, my grandmother was one of those ones who just said, you know, school is one of the most important things that you got to do so that you can move ahead and then help somebody else.
What are some of your favorite things about your community, and tell us also about some of the changes that you've seen over the years?
Okay, some of, I guess I kind of touched on some of them. Businesses in the local area, business so that we could identify and know that one day we could do those jobs. For instance, there was Dr. Stark's office that's right off of Sanford Avenue, and most of us around here have attended, he's attended to us. And then there was the Staples drugstore, which Black individuals were running these businesses. So Sanford Avenue was sort of full of black businesses. You had your couple of dry cleaners on there, barber shops that were down there, restaurants that were there. And now what I see is none of that. And that's not to say it's not still, when we use the word I want to use is being community served, but that's a change. That in pretty much the entire section of Sanford Avenue up to First Street. Maybe one or two businesses that were run by white individuals. We sort of, and it wasn't that we didn't get along with each other. We sort of did. I would say that. You know, people will say you didn't get along, but I think we did. It just was a sign of the times in which we were living. Little disappointed that most of those businesses are not. And I did not see them be revived by any of the children or their family members, you know. And I think part of it is because people move away. You know, they grow up, they go off to college in other places, and they decide to make their home somewhere else. But those are the kinds of things that are markedly different that we see. So our children need to see. They need to know that I can do what others do. And I think that's part of what's kind of missing. And like I say, now we still have a lot of educators are still present that we see and that are still here. However, they may or may not live in the neighborhood you live in anymore, which they kind of watched you everywhere. You know, if they saw you doing something, you were terrified because you knew that they would be able to share with your parent what kind of behavior you exhibited. So you always wanted it to be good because you didn't want them making contact with parents. And they would. Today, many individuals are afraid to say anything, not to the children nor to the parent. So where the community had their hand on you, it's removed more so. Not that they don't care, it's just a different time. So those are things I remember.
Excellent. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to add or expand on? Do you have any final thoughts for us?
Well, one of the things is I'm glad that Hopper still exists. I'm really glad to see the markers that are going to go up, identifying areas. So much history is being lost, and that's a sad turn of events. History is important, or you're doomed to make the same mistakes that were made before. So I think doing these kinds of things that where you preserve the history is extremely important, because if you know where you came from, you may have an idea where you want to go. So I think that kind of covers it.
Ms. Miller, thank you again so much for sharing your time and your story with us. We really appreciate it. This has been Jeffrey Crivero at Hopper Academy on February 8th, 2025.